Western Civilization. How much do you know? Shumei. My name is Russell Miles, and this is the 11th episode of our Western Civilization series. We have been exploring some of the characteristics that distinguish Western cultures from others, what it means to be Western. But this story would be incomplete without looking at what might have been the origins of Western culture. I feel some apprehension in trying to address this, as the framework of cultural studies has no unified approach. It more looks at political power's impact on cultural practices. There are a range of related disciplines: sociology, economics, anthropology, political science, theology, geography, psychology. These address the questions in varying ways. This has led to a wide range of assumptions and hypotheses about the advent of Western culture, which are often entangled in the ideology of the proponents. What I can do is present aspects of cultural development and offer some food for thought. Apartheid is an Afrikaans word for separateness, and saw the institution of oppression of non-Europeans in South Africa. This legally prescribed where a person could live, work, attend school, whom they could marry or engage in sexual relationships, etc., based on their race. All South Africans were classified into one of four general racial groups: black, white, coloured and Indian. Under this system, those of Chinese heritage were classified as coloured. What classification was given to Japanese? A. White, B. Coloured, C. Indian, or D. Black? Race is a social construct that groups people based on shared appearance, skin colour, facial features and body shape. While peoples have long identified themselves as distinct from neighbouring groups, the concept of race as a biological taxonomy is a modern phenomenon developed by Europeans. This concept is intertwined with language, nations and culture, and used to consider the development of human culture over time. This has included classifying peoples with darker skins as subspecies or inferior. This has long created controversy in seeking arbitrarily to apply biological templates. For example, Europeans, or whites, have been classified as Caucasian, reflecting that they had moved into Europe from the Caucasus Mountains in Central Asia. However, Asians, Indians and Persians also originated from the Caucasus. The term Caucasian is now less used, with the more obvious classification of European preferred. With Europe having long been a crossroad of humanity, this embraces a wide range of appearances and reflects the inadequacies of any such classification. The apartheid regime was also stridently anti-communist, mostly due to the post-colonisation wars on their borders, and where the then Soviet Union and Communist China provided military aid. Most Western countries were opposed to South Africa's race policies, both on human rights grounds, but also they perceived it as providing propaganda to communist countries in the Cold War. The South African regime was finding itself internationally isolated, so sought to reach out to other anti-communist countries. This included Japan, South Korea and Taiwan. Thus, for political reasons, they classified citizens from those countries as honorary whites. The ancient Italio peoples came from A. Aboriginal peoples of the peninsula, B. Ancient Greece, C. the Caucasus via the Danube Valley, or D. Sardinia. If you look at a map of Europe orientated 90 degrees, the nature of the Grand Peninsula from the Euro-Asian landmass becomes apparent. A map of the river systems is also instructive. This begins to give a sense of Europe towards the end of the last ice age, 20,000 years ago, with glaciers retreating and the desertified belt across southern Asia receiving rain and opening up fertile land. This saw a successive wave of peoples who had subsisted in the tundra of Central Asia expanding into newly favourable land, populations growing, and the advent of bell beaker technology, clay pottery, arrows, herding, and the emergence of a more sophisticated culture. Europe had been inhabited by modern humans for over 40,000 years. By the 8th century BCE, newer waves of people from the Danube, whose tribes grew and split, with some branches going west to Italy and the western Mediterranean. The Italio language and culture emerged in the Danube Valley, with the modern people of Italy including genetic links to ancient Greece, Celts, Sardinia, and other hunter-gatherer people. The geography these various peoples were to occupy was fertile, diverse, including significant natural resources, various river systems, mountains, plains, and rich seas. The climate was mild, tending towards chilly winters and wet springs. This encouraged agriculture with greater skills diversification, and the climate was neither too hot or too cold, which was favourable for human activity and work. One hypothesis is that the valleys, hills and rivers of Western Europe facilitated varying population concentrations, towns, early cities, while permitting trade and communication, but harder for one people to dominate others. The various realms and nations both formed alliances and competed. They would also be more open to new ideas, particularly in ward fighting, that might afford an advantage. In contrast, other major civilizations in the Euro-Asian continent, such as the Han Chinese, Babylonians and Egyptians, centered around broad estuaries and tended to have centralized kingdoms. This limited competition and threats. The Eastern civilizations were less innovative and even cautious about ideas that might challenge the status quo. Thus, European cultures had a comparative advantage due to geography and climate to the development of varying nations, which permitted competition of ideas, religion, and warfare. The area where Rome was to be built had people living there from around 1500 BCE. By 1000 BCE, farmers had settled in villages on the Palatine and Esquilian hills. These looked over the Tiber Valley, along which salt was traded. The hills also offered protection from marauding bands and was less prone to malaria of the swamplands. The people on the Palatine Hills were Latin speakers who had migrated from the north, while the Esquilian Hills were peopled by folk speaking a non-Indo-European language, probably an ancient Aboriginal people like the Basque. The two groups intermarried between powerful families and took to dominating the salt trade. There were other peoples too, Phoenicians and Greeks, trader colonies. They brought their own deities, technology and architecture. With population growth, the separate village walls eventually linked land between the hills was drained and built up. By 400 BCE, an aristocratic parliament with Senate Hall, a temple to Vestia, the goddess of family, and a royal palace were in existence. Although the landed families had established a republican form of governance by then, the earliest legal code, the 12 Tables, reflected a harsh society, with the eldest male rule, and whom could sell other family members into slavery. Veii was an Etruscan city situated about 16 kilometres northwest of Rome along the Valchetta, which flows into the Tiber River. The two cities were rivals over the salt trade. In 396 BCE, Rome laid siege and destroyed Veii, slaughtering the adult male population, selling the survivors into slavery, and wrecking what remains. What propelled the Romans to such excesses? Whereas hitherto they had compelled sericity and tribute, not absolute destruction. Where had this viciousness emerged that would lead Rome to conquer the Mediterranean sphere and influence Western civilization? A thesis by Professor Victor Hansen, The Western Way of War, Infantry Battle in Classical Greece, 1989, argued that a citizen class of heavily armed infantry seeking a decisive engagement, fighting with honour, was a decisive difference to other cultures and created an ideal for the West. Greek culture certainly developed traditions and institutions in literature, governance, engineering and science that inspired later development in Western Europe. This included attitudes of citizenship, rule of law and democratic practices. Professor Hansen's thesis has been much challenged. The Persians, Egyptians and Han dynasties pursued bitter battles, and the Greeks also practiced skirmishes and battles of maneuver, along with the famous siege of Troy. The Greeks, being smaller, often sought to avoid being destroyed by not pursuing a defeated enemy. The Greeks were really little different in attitude to warfare than their enemies. Greece was a slave-based state, whereas their erstwhile Achaemenid Persian enemy eschewed slavery. Which would we see as the more noble society? A contemporary image of this thesis might be the wicked Islamic terrorist sneakily planting a roadside bomb compared to the gallant Western pilot directing position-guided musicians upon enemy positions. A Royal Air Force pilot in Iraq in the 1920s stated, "What is the difference from throwing a baby onto a fire to dropping fire on a baby from 4,000 feet?" This proposition again reveals more about its proponents than throws light on Western military dominance. Judaism is one of the oldest organised religions and one of the earliest to adopt monotheism. Exodus 22, "I am the Lord your God." This was a departure from nature worship. For example, Egyptian Atonism or sun god, Babylonian and Greek gods, etc. However, Zoroastrianism had held there was a Ahura Mazda or wise supreme being from the 2nd millennium BCE. There would have been interaction of ideas between various philosophers, teachers, and leaders. Aristotle and the other Greek philosophers asserted that humans could understand the natural world by studying physical phenomena and mathematics, and there must be a first cause rational creator. This was controverted as traditional Greek gods were held as erratic and indifferent to humans. The Western Mediterranean was a cross-path between Greeks, Judaism, and others. Perhaps this had helped ferment new ideas. Christians adopted the Judean idea with "in the beginning was the Word," Logos. That is, a principle of divine reason and creative order. Christianity also stressed a God who loved humanity, which would be more attractive compared with more indifferent gods. This also allowed concepts of justice and personal choice, not dictates of the ruler. These were steps towards ecclesiastical and secular powers adopting rule of law to reduce disputes. Then the Enlightenment, questioning mercantile economics and to free trade and political freedoms. What social characteristics led to scientific inquiry and innovation that we have been describing? Perhaps it is that other world religions emphasise mystery and intuition, whereas Christianity included reason and logic as guides to religious truth. Might this be an explanation? Could the development of political and civil rights have occurred without the evolution from religious thought? We probably can't know. Nietzsche's famous quote that God is dead reflected his view that Western civilization had moved on from its Christian character and become dominated by scientific rationality. Nietzsche saw this as a change from good versus bad to good versus evil. That is, the aristocracy's ideals of piety, charity, and pursuit of knowledge had contrasted with the wretched lives of peasantry, whereas these noble ideals were now challenged by materialism, militarism, and abuse of power. This required the defining of values beyond looking to religious revelation. These issues remain a field of debate regarding the origins of contemporary Western culture. The next episode will be the last in this Western Civilization series. This will look at the intertwine between East and West which has led to our more perfect global culture. I've included a link at the bottom to a quiz about Western civilization, so you can have some fun finding out what you do know. If you like this channel, please subscribe and tick like. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd be pleased if there is another related subject you'd like to explore. I'd also be happy to help you create your own podcast to contribute to this fascinating topic. I can be contacted at email russmills@iprimus.com.au. Thank you for listening.